This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com in association with BetVictor. I'm your host, Dan Bardell. Martin Lawrence dropped after his shocking performance on the bets last week, so Josh from WhoScored is going to replace him. And it's an Edge of the Box debut for Raj from the Premier League panel. Raj, welcome. For those who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I've been running Premier League panel for a few years now. I've just got into the tactical side of football with that, really. Started writing a few tactical articles as well, along with that for BBC Sport. That is probably the side of the game I most enjoy, the tactics.
That's good. I mean, I'm not sure how much tactical knowledge Josh and myself have between us, but it would be nice to have some tactical insight on the show this week. And Josh, pleased to be back. Can't believe it's taken this long, to be honest, after some of Martin's displays.
I know, I thought it would become a bit sooner, to be honest. But it is always good to be back with you guys.
Good stuff. So it's obviously there's no Premier League games this week, so we're going to have a look at the transfer window in general and how the Premier League is shaping up. Josh, I'll come to you first. So far, 3 games in, transfer window now slammed shut. Who has impressed you most? Pick a player, pick a team, pick what you want, basically.
I'm going to go with a player to start for this one, and I'm going to go with Jamie Vardy, just because last season I thought that we saw the start of his decline. He still ended up scoring 15 goals, but I think 8 of those were penalties, and he just wasn't influencing games as often. I think if you take out penalty goals for Leicester, Harvey Barnes actually scored more than him, and Barnes obviously was injured for the last 3 or 4 months of the season. And obviously they signed Patson Daka, who just seemed like a ready-made sort of replacement for Vardy. And I knew that Daka wouldn't start straight away, but Vardy's really come out of the traps quite quickly. I think he's played a direct hand in 3 of Leicester's 4 goals this season. So he's not showing any signs of declining just yet, I guess. So I've been quite surprised by him, to be honest.
Yeah, he always manages to reinvent himself, Jamie Vardy, doesn't he, Raj? He had Iheanacho breathing down his neck last season, who actually, to be fair, he probably scored more goals in the second half of the season than Vardy, but he's back to playing up top on his own in the main, and he's leading the line, he's doing the business.
Yeah, definitely. As Josh said, I'm very impressed with how he's come back to form, especially with that competition with Daka. That might actually bring more out of him this season. I think Daka is a very similar profile of striker to Vardy. He loves making those runs in behind, so you can see why Leicester bought him. So yeah, maybe Vardy moves on another level from last season. Who's your player then, Raj? I will go with another English striker, actually, or he's declared for Jamaica now, so maybe we can call him Jamaican and English. So Mikel Antonio. This guy, I've been a big fan of Mikel Antonio for the last 3-4 years. I think Moyes converted him into a striker. We all know he's playing right back, right midfield, and the previous managers. But Antonio now, he's really impressed me. Not just his goals, not just his assists. He's a nightmare for defenders, really. He runs the channels. He holds up the ball. He gave Soyuncu a terrible time in that game against Leicester. So yeah, Mikel Antonio is my player of the season so far in this short 3-game stint. Yeah, another player that manages to just reinvent himself and seems to get better and stronger with age. I'd plump for Greenwood. I think he's been really, really good first 3 games. Another goal for him at the weekend against Wolves, although Manchester United have made a tiny signing, which we'll come onto, which could impact his game time ever so slightly. I went for Brentford. Very impressed with their start, and I watched them obviously at Villa Park on Saturday as they grinded a 1-1 draw out with my beloved Aston Villa. And I just think they've adapted to the Premier League really quickly. Look solid at the back. They were a threat on the counter. And they've got off to a tidy start, haven't they?
Yeah, you called it last week, I think, didn't you? 1-1.
1-1, yeah.
You called it, nailed on. They're obviously so impressive in the first game as well against Arsenal. Really just, they made Arsenal look like the newly promoted team, really. But yeah, they've made a great start. And I think everyone sort of not expected like a great start, but thought they would be fine this season. I think they're definitely playing that sort of way. Even Tony, it's important for him as well that he got off the mark at the weekend. Not so much for you, but
yeah, it was great timing, wasn't it, Josh?
But it was a great finish, and yeah, I think they're going to be a breath of fresh air this season.
And you talk about them getting off to a good start against Arsenal. I think we could play as a front 3, and we might cause Arsenal a few problems the way they're going at the moment. Who've you picked, Raj?
So I'm going to go with Chelsea. Obviously, they got the draw on Saturday. I think that showed the real strength of this Chelsea side as a unit, going down to 10 men against Liverpool. And they didn't even look like conceding in that second half. I think the tactical shape that Tuchel's got with that 3-4-3 system it's making them very solid defensively. I won't be surprised if they concede a very low number of goals this season, and that is what they build a potential title challenge on. And obviously against Arsenal, they were very impressive as well, swept them away quite easily, to be honest. So yeah, I'll go with Chelsea.
Yeah, they let in a ridiculously low amount of goals the one season under Mourinho. It was like 18 goals in a season or something ridiculously low like that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they could end up doing that again. Which team have you picked, Josh?
This is going to be a weird one because they've got no points, and it's not Arsenal. But I was really impressed by Wolves especially against Manchester United on Sunday. They definitely didn't deserve to lose. It's weird that they haven't scored a goal yet, but if they can get that bit right in the final third, then I think they're going to be a real good team to watch this season. Certainly way more exciting than what they became under Nuno. I think they've had 57 shots in the Premier League this season, which ranks, they're certainly in the top 5 of teams, but they're just not off the mark. But I'm sure that will change soon.
Yeah, I thought they were a really good watch on Sunday against Manchester United. Caused them untold problems. I mean, how they didn't score off that set piece. Great double save from De Gea, but you've got to be sticking the ball in the back of the net, and their new manager must be wondering what they've got to do to score. Josh, I believe you've got a Who Scored Premier League Team of the Month to reveal for us. So do you want to take us through that?
So we've got Hugo Lloris in goal. Tottenham are the only team that haven't conceded yet, so I guess you can't really fault him there. And then moving into defence, we've got Alexander Arnold with Azpilicueta, Shane Duffy, and Marcus Alonso. I'm not sure you'd have expected Alonso or Shane Duffy to feature quite so prominent for Brighton and Chelsea, but they've both been excellent. Into midfield, we've got Mo Salah, Jack Grealish, Pogba, and Traore. Traore would probably be the best player in the world if he had a bit of composure. He's pretty much unplayable up until the point he gets in the box. But yeah, he's on the left hand side for us. And Pogba, he's already got more assists than he had in the whole of last season. It wasn't at his best against Wolves in a deeper position, but he still did pick out a few 3 or 4 good balls over the top of the defence. And then up front, you'll both be pleased to know that we've got Mikel Antonio as one. He's actually our top rated player in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. 7 goal contributions already, which is frightening. And then he's joined up front with Mason Greenwood, who has scored in all 3 of Man United's games.
There we go. Good picks early doors. Anything you disagree with there, Raj? Anyone you'd like to have seen make the cut?
No, I think that's a pretty fair assessment, to be honest. I like that partnership, Antonio Greenwood up top. I think Greenwood is excelling, particularly in that right-hand channel. He saw against Southampton, he came in from the right-hand side and got his goal. And then against Wolves, he absolutely roasted the Wolves left-back, went down the outside. So yeah, I quite like that team, to be honest, particularly the strike pairing.
I'm going to pick a fault with it, Josh.
Go on.
It wouldn't be the Edge of the Box podcast if myself or Jonathan Wilson usually weren't picking the fault. Is there? I'm not having Azpilicueta as a centre back in a 2. I can't be allowing that. I can't have that.
That is what we also had that discussion as well when we were looking at the stats. But unfortunately, there's just no way around it. He was the second highest centre back, and it wouldn't have worked with a 3 because it would have meant dropping out one of the other guys who had a better rating. But yeah, okay. We do agree that it's probably not a functional back 4.
No, I mean they probably wouldn't have to do too much defending, so we'd probably be okay. You've got the top 10 new signings as well, haven't you? So far.
So we'll go through that as well. So this is based on players who have featured in 2 of the first 3 games. So that's why Ronaldo doesn't feature, obviously. Grealish and Lukaku are actually 2nd and 3rd respectively, as they've made the best start of all the new signings. But they're actually beaten to top spot by Conor Gallagher, helped by his 2-goal haul at the weekend. One of the goals was pretty amazing as well, a little Cruyff turn, which past the goalie, which is good. And then, so I'll just run through the rest. So it's Gallagher in 1, Grealish 2, Lukaku 3, Emmanuel Dennis in 4, Damari Gray in 5, who I guess we might speak about a little bit more later on. Danny Ings, and then Franco Onyenka for Brentford with Buendia and Trincao and Kuchka of Watford completing the 10.
I've watched Kuchka play live on the first game of the season at Vicarage Road as they dismantled Villa. I've got to say, I was very impressed with him. I thought he had a nice presence in midfield. Thought he was a really good player. Quite surprised to see Buendia in there, if I'm being honest. I know he scored a nice goal for Villa on Saturday, but he's not looked fully fit to me, and he's not been too involved in the game. So I'm surprised to see him in there, to be honest.
For what it's worth, I would say that the ratings do drop quite severely once you get to about Buendia. I think there's just scraping 7s, whereas Gallagher, Grealish, and Lukaku are either 8s or high 7s. So there is a big difference between the top and bottom half of that.
Jack Grealish sitting in second, Raj. I don't really want to talk about him too much because I'm still very, very upset about him leaving. But what have you made of his start?
Yeah, I had a few concerns about where Grealish would fit in into this City team. But I think what Pep's setting up with now, Grealish fits in quite nicely. He's got that front man Ferran Torres up top. He put Gabriel Jesus on the wing and Grealish coming in as a playmaker behind those two off the left-hand side. I think that works quite well because you've got Ferran makes those very good runs in behind. He's quick. He's quite intelligent. I think his assists for Rodri showed he's got a bit more intelligence about his play, not just about pace. And then Gabriel Jesus on that right-hand side has been brilliant. He tore Norwich apart down there. He was very good there against Arsenal. I think that's where he excelled for Brazil as well. I think back in the 2019 Copa America, he makes very good runs and he cuts the ball back into the box. He's very good at doing that. So I think Grealish as a creator behind those two, it's working quite well in terms of tactical balance.
It's quite a surprise, isn't it? I mean, you've just mentioned Jesus there playing for Brazil, but it's quite a surprise in some ways that Torres is the one leading the line and then Jesus is out on the right. That wouldn't have been anticipated.
Maybe last season showed Pep that he did have a few issues with Jesus as a striker. He didn't really link play as well as a Pep striker normally wants to do. I think Ferran's doing that a lot better. I think Ferran's averaging 23, 24 passes per game, which is similar to Roberto Firmino, he hits around 29 passes per game. So that shows Ferran's getting a lot more involved, which a Pep number 9 needs to do.
And guess who took Ferran Torres out of his fantasy football team this weekend to shoehorn Harry Kane in? That would be the dad wearing the Dortmund shirt presenting this podcast. Josh, what have you made of Jack Grealish then at the start? There was a few question marks about how he was going to fit in, but I mean, he's such a sensational player. He was always going to make it work.
Yeah, and if there was a manager to make it work, you would always back that to be Pep Guardiola. Like Raj said, I was not concerned, but I was interested to see how it would play out because Grealish does like to slow the play down sometimes, as opposed to Guardiola's usual quite fluid football. But I mean, apart from the opening game, they've scored 10 goals in their last 2 games, so you would say that it's going pretty well. I just love the arrogance Grealish shows on the ball. I don't want to put him on the same level as Ronaldo, but it reminds me as a Man United fan of when Ronaldo was at the end of his first stint at Manchester United. He just knew that he was better than his opposite number, and I think that really shows when Grealish plays. And he's just great to watch, and I think he will be for the whole season.
Yeah, I know it wasn't the most clinical and best finish you'll ever see in your life, Raj, the goal that he bagged against Norwich, but I don't know whether you noticed it, that just a little bit of movement that he did to get himself across his man and in front to be in the position to tuck it home. Not really what you associate him with getting on the end of crosses, but that's a big facet of how Pep teams play. And if you're going to play in the Pep front three, you do have to do things like that, don't you? So he's showing he's adapted already, really. Yeah,
definitely. I think that was, as you say, that's a very positive sign early into his stint there. I mean, you've seen with Pep, he's very good at coaching that kind of movement into his wide players. Obviously, Pedro was one of the first to benefit from it. He got his best ever goal scoring season under Pep. Then you had Ian Robben, I think, got his best goal scoring season under Pep. And then we've seen Raheem Sterling. He wasn't really much of a goal scorer before Pep came along, and he became prolific. So Grealish showing those signs is very positive, and I think we'll see a lot more of that off the ball stuff. Because obviously, as Josh says, we associate him with that arrogance on the ball, but off the ball, that is what you need to do in a Pep team.
Yeah, he's worked with some decent wingers, Pep, hasn't he? It's quite an embarrassment of riches in the teams he's been at. Would you expect Jack to be somewhere near aiming for PFA Player of the Year by the end of the season, Josh?
I think definitely. I mean, if you spend £100 million on a player, then they've certainly got to be in those sort of categories come the end of the season. And if City go all the way, which many people believe they will, then Grealish has got to be in the conversation. You would expect, because if City have a good season, then you would expect Grealish to have a good season as well. I think what I am quite happy about that Man City didn't sign a striker just so it makes it a bit more competitive. And I think there will be probably a bit more pressure on Grealish in that respect, as they're only like frontline signing. But all the signs so far, after a fairly okay start, he's growing into it really nicely.
Yeah, and staying with you, Josh, I mean, we did do probably a quarter or a third of a podcast last week about Manchester City signing a striker called Cristiano Ronaldo. Just for him to go to Manchester United and that segment of the podcast be a complete waste of time. Can you believe he's gone back?
As a Manchester United fan, to start with, I was trying to figure out whether I wanted it or not. Part of me was like,
you've got to want that, surely. Come on.
I did in the end. That is what I settled with. I think probably more emotionally than anything else. But I was just had flashbacks of Alexis Sanchez, but obviously Ronaldo's on a different level. And I was looking back at what Manchester United have been missing basically since Ferguson retired, and they haven't had a single player that scored 20 league goals in a season since he left. 2 of the last 3 seasons have been top goal scorers have been Pogba and Fernandes, who are both midfielders. So they're clearly lacking in that department. I think originally it was supposed to be next summer they looked at that. And even though they've signed Ronaldo this summer, all the signs are that they're going to go for Haaland next summer. So as long as it doesn't stop a long-term signing like that, not to say that they'll get Haaland, but to be in the conversation, I think it's important. Ronaldo is going to go down as a bit of a disastrous signing for Juventus. They regressed, there's no doubt about that, but he still scored 50 league goals in the last 2 seasons. So Manchester United are getting one of the best goal scorers in the world, and he has been for the last decade. So it can only really improve things, you'd hope, but obviously it depends how Solskjaer knits everything together behind him.
I would say, Raj, it's probably impossible that he's going to make Manchester United worse. I'm not saying they're doing badly, but I just can't see any way in the world in which he makes them worse. I can only see positives in that he's going to improve them. I mean, Jonathan Wilson absolutely panned Ronaldo last week talking about him going to Manchester City, but I think having him as that iconic man back at Manchester United, probably back in the number 7 shirt, leading the line. Man, you haven't really had a superstar since he left, I would say. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, probably. As you say, that kind of galvanising effect he'll have on everyone else is huge, I think. I think we can't underrate that side of things. It's not just the on-pitch stuff, it's the off-pitch stuff as well. He's going to be a leader. I think I've already seen Harry Maguire come out saying this guy's going to inspire us, take us to new levels. I think that's exactly what he's going to do. And someone like Mason Greenwood alongside him as well, that can only benefit him. Also, I think people have said it's just a City signing to stop City getting in. I don't agree with that completely, to be honest. I think there is a room for a goal-scoring 9, as Josh already said. I think the solutions they've got at the moment are a bit imperfect, all of them. I think you see Mason Greenwood is still very good on that right-hand side, and you saw that against Wolves and Southampton. You've seen Edinson Cavani, his body doesn't really hold up to a full season in the Premier League. I think he started only 13 or 14 Premier League games that season. And Anthony Martial has dipped considerably since the 2019-20 season. So I think there is definitely a gap for a goal-scoring number 9, like Cristiano Ronaldo now is. So yeah, I think it's a good signing, to be honest.
Because obviously he'll come alive in the big games in the Champions League. That's his playground, that's his realm. But Manchester United actually struggled, Josh, in home games against the lesser sides, and just having someone who can pull something out of nothing like Ronaldo can only be of a benefit.
I mean, exactly. This is a guy that scored at least 20 goals for the last 12 seasons. It's outrageous. He's reinvented his game throughout that whole time. He's a completely different player to the player that left Manchester United back in 2009, but they're getting a bona fide goal scorer and someone that will score in the biggest moments. So yeah, in helping Manchester United unlock those teams that have a low block and pack everyone in behind the ball, and when you've got a guy like Ronaldo that can create a bit of magic just from nothing, it's only going to help them. And I think just going back to what you said earlier about the galvanizing effect, I think I saw a quote from Lee Grant today that he was asked about how he felt about Ronaldo coming, and he said that he can only imagine what it's going to have on the other players, because he now can't wait to try and show Ronaldo how good of a goalie he is. That he even knows himself that he's going to have to step up his performances just to impress Ronaldo. So it's going to have that effect across the whole squad, that everyone wants to impress this guy. Standards are going to improve in training. And I think that should only really benefit Manchester United.
Of all the players I was expecting you to quote, their 4th choice goalkeeper, Lee Grant, wasn't going to be one of them. Why is Lee Grant being asked?
I guess he's the only guy knocking around, I guess, for international duty.
Everyone else away. That's mad. Lee Grant was the last person I was expecting to hear from. Absolutely ridiculous. I've completely lost my trail of thought. All I can think about now is Lee Grant coming out to give an interview about Ronaldo coming. I've remembered what I was going to ask. Raj, who's on pens now? Ronaldo or Fernandes?
I think you've got to go with Ronaldo. I mean, it fits into the whole kind of leadership aspect as well. This guy's going to assume control of a lot of parts of the team. And I think penalties is including that. Hopefully, for Man United to take, not free kicks. I think Bruno is the better free kick taker these days. I think I don't know the exact stats, but I think Ronaldo's scored 1 free kick in about 3 or 4 seasons. So yeah, I think Bruno's definitely got a pull rank on that one.
Yeah, I saw a great tweet from someone that said something like, it's nice to see Ronaldo go back to the team, but that he was out the last time he scored a free kick. There hasn't been too many over the last few years. Yeah, Fernandez's goals are going to be cut in half as well, Josh. No pens.
I know, yeah, people that love to criticise Fernandes are going to be all over that as soon as he's off penalties and his goals start to dip a bit. But I don't think Bruno will mind. I think silverware, as he always says, is the most important thing over goals and assists. So I'm sure he'll be fine.
He's probably a little bit annoyed having spent the summer overshadowed by Ronaldo in the Euros, and now he's joined his club team as well.
That is actually one thing I'm a little bit concerned by, because obviously Bruno and Ronaldo don't play.
And link up well.
They certainly haven't excelled together for Portugal, but I'm hoping that it's mainly down to Portugal's system that doesn't get the best out of Bruno Fernandes rather than anything between those two.
And staying with you, Josh, is Ronaldo ever Manchester United's best signing this summer? Because they've done some fantastic business.
If you said to a Man United fan that the players that they were going to get at the start of the summer, I think they would be laughing. He is the biggest signing, but because we haven't signed a midfielder that can control the game, I think you have to make Varane the most important signing.
I thought he did well on Sunday. He was good.
It was a really tough game for Man United's defence, but I think apart from getting beaten for the header that led to De Gea's double save, I think Varane was really important. He had that calming presence. He was always in the right place at the right time, and he's going to have to be a lot this season, because I'm not sure Fred and McTominay are the midfield partnership that are going to lead Man United to the title.
Yeah, and Raj, are you worried, as a Liverpool fan, are you worried that Manchester United's summer transfer business is going to make them pip you in the battle for third?
Yeah, I think every top 4 contender's got to be worried about Man United this year. Those are some big signings they pulled out the bag. Obviously, the midfielder is the one they wanted as well, but I think those signings, as Josh said, Varane looks like a very calming presence and a leader at the back again, alongside Maguire. Sancho, I think Sancho might take a bit more time to adapt, but I think Ronaldo is going to be in there with the goal straight away. So yeah, it's a fantastic window for United, and yeah, they should be in the title battle, to be honest.
If you had to place them, where would you place them?
If I had to put my house on it, I would have them I'd have them in third, ahead of Liverpool, actually. Yeah, I think Liverpool's transfer window, I'm sure we'll go on to that later on, but they've had a terrible window in terms of not strengthening their attack and also not replacing Wijnaldum. United have strengthened several areas, so yeah, I'll probably have them just ahead. Chelsea, for me, are ahead of United still, and I've got City top.
I don't think Solskjaer can have any excuses if we don't challenge for the title this season, but I do agree that I think it's hard to look beyond Chelsea and Man City. Yeah, I would say they're going to finish third, and I don't think that's good enough, especially for who they've signed. But yeah, those two teams do look a bit more superior at the moment.
I think one of Liverpool or United will go quite far in the Champions League, and whoever goes furthest will end up being the ones that finish fourth, because they'll end up focusing on that. I fancy both of them teams in the Champions League this season to go far, actually. But yeah, there can't be any excuses for Manchester United now. Solskjaer's squad is just absolutely ridiculous. I get that every Manchester United fan would have wanted a central midfielder, but if you'd have been offered what you'd been given this transfer window, you'd have snapped people's hands off it for it at the start. So yeah, there could be no excuses anymore. Let's just talk about Liverpool quickly then, Raj. Are you disappointed then with what's happened? Obviously, Konate is a good player, comes with good pedigree from Leipzig, and it solves a problem in that there wasn't enough centre-halves for Liverpool last season, and any centre-half that was there got injured. But do you think Wijnaldum's that much of a miss that it will cause that many problems? Number
one, Wijnaldum, it was his availability which was key. This guy never got injured. He was available for every matchday squad. And you look at the rest of Liverpool's midfield, you got Henderson, Keita, Oxlade-Chamberlain, they're all injury prone. Even Fabinho picks up the odd muscle strain as well. So Wijnaldum was key from that point of view. Secondly, that left-hand sided role in the midfield three, Wijnaldum was brilliant at that. It was really the glue between the midfield and the attack, which Wijnaldum was. And defensively, he filled in the spaces to stop counter-attacks. And I think Henderson really struggled in that left-sided midfield role against Chelsea. Number one, his passing wasn't suited to that role, because you need to drive forward from the left-handed side position if you're a right footer. Henderson was quite static, and it limits your range of passing, really, if you like that. So yeah, I think he's a key miss. And also, I think Liverpool should have strengthened the attack. I think Sadio Mane hasn't been the same since the 2019-20 season. Firmino's arguably had 2 seasons of a dip in form. So I think you're really asking a lot of Jota and Salah to carry the attack with those two maybe in decline. So I think an attacker was badly needed to push them on into the title race this season.
But you could say that if they'd made signings, Harvey Elliott's been a nice little perk at the start of the season. If you sign someone else who's perhaps going to be backup, not play every game, you're kind of stopping his route into the first team, because he's made a good start to the season.
Yeah, Harvey Elliott's good on that in that right-sided 8 position, but then again, I think that's where Henderson's going to play as well. So I think the more concern is on that left-hand side. I think Henderson and Elliott are decent options there. But yeah, I think Elliott's a good player. I think he's going to be a midfielder, I think, for Klopp this season. He hasn't got that explosive pace for a Klopp from free player. So yeah, Elliott's good, but I think really they did need that attacker and that midfielder really to push them on. I think Konate, as you said, is a good signing. But you can even argue with Konate, that has come a season too late. They sold Dejan Lovren last summer and didn't replace Lovren. And I think they're actually repeating the mistake by not signing a midfielder attacker. That's going to come maybe next summer, but it's come a year too late again. So I think Liverpool's transfer strategy isn't very proactive at the moment, and that's the problem with it, I think.
Yeah, didn't they announce a load of new contracts yesterday on deadline day just to try and paper over the fact that they hadn't done any business?
Henderson and Nat Phillips, yeah. So, yeah, you can tell the owners are playing the game a bit as well. They know it's been a disappointing window. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what happens. Still a sensational side on their day, but yeah, I think you've persuaded me, actually. They probably should have bought a midfielder, and you raised some valid points there. Now, we haven't got Sam Boswell from BetVictor like we normally do, Josh, but you're going to do your best Sam Boswell impression, and you're going to give us some stuff, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to try. I hope he doesn't feel like I'm standing on his toes here. But so based on Cristiano Ronaldo, BetVictor have got an extensive list of markets available for him. You can back things like him to be the top goal scorer in the league, to outscore certain rivals like Kane and Lukaku, whether he'll win the PFA Player of the Year, that sort of thing. But we've actually taken our fancy for Ronaldo to score 5 or more headed goals in the Premier League this season. We've managed to get a small boost on that from 3-1 to 7-2. He's obviously a beast in the air. Everyone knows that. Last season, he scored 7 headed goals for Juventus. Edison Cavani got 6 for Manchester United and barely played. That ranks second of all players in the Premier League. So yeah, the delivery is going to be there. You've got Sancho, you've got Fernandes, Shaw as well. Wan-Bissaka's delivery is improving as well. So Ronaldo should have ample opportunities to get at least 5 headed goals. And also we've got another bet for Ronaldo. We've requested a special this time. We looked into Ronaldo's favourite current Premier League opponents in terms of who he scored his most goals against.
It's not Villa, is it?
It is Villa. He scored.
I thought it might be.
He scored 8 goals against Aston Villa in his Premier League career. That's his favourite team. And then he's got 5 against both West Ham and Newcastle. And incredibly, after the international break, they're Manchester United's next 3 Premier League opponents. So he starts with a home game against Newcastle. Then he's got West Ham, and then he's got Villa. So his favourite 3 teams to score against, he's got in his next 3 games. And BetVictor have priced it up as 6-1 for him to score in each of those. It's just a remarkable coincidence.
I mean, to be honest, I think Villa must be a lot of players' favourite teams. I mean, Robbie Fowler only had to look at Villa Park and the ball was in the net. Honestly, we must be so many players' favourite teams to play against. I think we were Gerrards, I think we were Lampards, I don't know what it is. We're every player's favourite team to score a goal against. You having those bets, Raj?
Yeah, I think Ronaldo is going to be in the goals, definitely looking at those stats. I think Newcastle as well, they started the season terribly from a defensive point of view. Obviously, Stevie Bruce is not having a great time out there. Graham Jones does a lot of the tactics, but he's been renowned for being quite open in terms of setting up his defences. So I think I like those bets, to be honest.
Yeah, man, I'm already feeling. I mean, Villa never do anything against Manchester United anyway. Chuck in Ronaldo as well, and we might as well not bother turning up. Who's going to score more goals, Raj? Lukaku or Ronaldo? That
is an interesting question. I think you've got to weigh a couple of things up here. Lukaku, obviously, I think at his age, he's at peak physical condition, and I think he's going to play almost every Premier League game for Chelsea. I don't think Timo Werner is the required substitution for him. I think Werner probably end up getting more games behind Lukaku, so he'll probably play more games. But then Ronaldo will be on penalties, as we discussed earlier. And I think Jorginho will keep the penalties at Chelsea. So it's a tough one, really. I think on balance, I'd probably go with Lukaku. Purely, I think he will play more games. I think Ronaldo will still get rested here and there, maybe for Champions League games, especially if United progress late into the competition. So yeah, I think Lukaku edges it.
I feel like Ronaldo might just play every game. I mean, he'll be able to do what he wants. If he wants to play, they'll play him. When Solskjaer isn't going to say, no, you're not playing today. If Ronaldo wants to play, the penalties is interesting because I do think it's a key part. Manchester United do obviously get a lot of penalties, but Chelsea have signed Saul now as well. So Jorginho might not play every game. So Lukaku may get in on a penalty. It'd be really, really tight. I'm gonna go for Lukaku. I think that's the sensible one, and he's already scored, so he's already up. Josh, who would you pick?
I think it's interesting because Ronaldo outscored Lukaku in both of the last two Serie A seasons, and Lukaku was Inter were the better team in both of those. Well, certainly last season, and they had the better coach. So Ronaldo has already shown that he can outscore Lukaku, and I think he scored 5 more than Lukaku last season for a terrible Juventus team. So he can do it, but as Raj said, it's just whether he is going to play all the games. I don't think he will, especially as you said around the Champions League. He is getting on to 37, and while he does look like a 22-year-old, he surely does need to be taken care of. And I think Ronaldo knows that himself. He knows his body. He knows that sort of side of the game. So I think it is hard to look beyond Lukaku, but I would not be surprised if Ronaldo ended up scoring more.
Tuchel likes a bit of rotation as well. There's nothing to say but before Champions League games, Lukaku won't be sat on the bench in the Premier League. But let's be honest, they're both going to score a hell of a lot of goals, aren't they? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Raj, am I right in thinking that you've compiled a best new signing 11, and that's going to go up against the Who Scored 2020-21 rating so far, 11? Is that right?
Yeah, I've compiled one a bit. I was struggling in some positions, but I've managed to find an 11 for you, yeah.
Give me what's your formation then to start, because that will dictate how I decide to do this.
So formation, let's go for a 4-2-3-1.
A Who Scored 4-4-2 as ever,
Correct.
Josh?
Correct.
No,
Yeah.
that's completely ruins what I want to do. Go on then, Raj. Take us through your 11.
So, goalkeeper, I was struggling with this one a bit. I think, obviously, Aaron Ramsdale's been signed for Arsenal. I'm not a huge fan of Ramsdale. I think he was actually one of the reasons Sheffield United regressed last season after having Dean Henderson. So I've gone for Alphonse Areola. Obviously, Areola's not come in as an instant starter. He's been on the bench so far. Yeah, I think he's an excellent keeper. Yeah, for Fulham last season, I think he was one of their bright spots. He's good on the ball. I think he was quite reliable last season. I think he cut out a lot of the errors from his game, which he had previously. So yeah, I've got him in goal, and I think he will take Fabianski's place eventually. Let's move on to the defence. Right back, I've got Livramento. I've been very impressed with him at Southampton so far. I think he combines good technical skill, but he's also very quick and athletic as well, which I didn't expect for someone who's 18 years of age. He's already got that in his locker. So yeah, I've been very impressed with him. Against Man U, he's probably one of their best players as well. I think they got him for 6 million, I think, and Chelsea put a buyback in for around 25 million. So I think he could end up back at Stamford Bridge in the next couple of years. Centre-back partnership, I've got Romero at Spurs. This guy is one of my favourite centre-backs to watch in Europe. I watched a lot of Atalanta last season, and it was him really gluing that defence together. He's a leader, he's aggressive, and positionally he's quite sound as well. I think he was the man of the match for Argentina in the Copa America final. Cristiano Romero alongside Rafa Varane. I think we talked about Varane and what he'll offer to United. Left back, I've gone for a late signing, Mark Cucurella, who's coming at Brighton. I think he probably won't play left back in a back four for Brighton as much. He'll probably play left wing back, but he's a very good player. I watched Spain at the Olympics. Cucurella was one of their bright sparks. I think he gets up and down the wing a lot. He's got a good cross on him, and I think that was a big hole in Brighton's 11 last year, the left wing back position. I think Dan Burn played there, but he wasn't most suited to it. The midfield double pivot, I've gone for number 1, Billy Gilmour. It's a loan signing, but I think he really he epitomises what Daniel Farke wants from his Norwich team. He wants people who are comfortable in possession, good on the ball technically, and able to pass it around. And Gilmour's definitely that. And I think even at the Etihad, he showed that when Norwich got beaten 5-0, he showed personality on the ball. It stood out to me. I think he passed the ball more than Ilkay Gundogan and Bernardo Silva in that game. So those guys were starting in a midfield three with Rodri, and so that shows kind of what kind of personality he offers on the ball, Gilmour. So alongside him, I've got Joe Willock. I think that's a top signing from Newcastle. He was brilliant at the end of last season, and I think he might be the difference to Newcastle staying up. He's got goals from midfield, which I think is vital for any relegation candidate. Not many teams can say they've got that. So Willock in the midfield with Gilmore. 3 ahead of them. On the right, I've got your man at Villa, Emi Buendia. I think he'll have a crucial role to play. Jack Grealish's creative role. Buendia will fulfill that. And I was quite pleased to see his goal-scoring numbers have increased in the Championship. He got 15 goals, I think. And then again, he got that goal against Brentford. So that was one thing lacking from his game when he was at Norwich last time in the Premier League. So very pleased to see that. So he can provide goals and assists now. So I think Buendia on the right. As a number 10, I've gone for another late signing, Nikola Vlasic at West Ham. This guy, I think, has improved massively since his last time in the Premier League at Everton. I think he's going to take on Jesse Lingard's role as that kind of conduit between the defence and the attack, picking the ball up on the halfway line a lot of the times on counter-attacks and driving forwards with his pace, with his dribbling, and then connecting to the likes of Antonio, Benrahma, Fornals. So I think he's going to have a big role to play in that number 10 position for West Ham. Off the left, this guy is probably more of a long-term signing, I think, but I think it's a brilliant signing. Brian Hill at Spurs. I think he's finally replaced that creativity which Spurs have lacked since Christian Eriksen's departure. I think I was very impressed with him again at the Olympics. He had brief cameos off the bench, but he's a very good dribbler. He's quick, and he's also got that through ball in his locker to play passes in behind to the likes of Kane and so on. So I don't think he'll start immediately for Spurs, but I think he'll gradually be phased into the team. I think he costs around 23 million. I think that's a bargain price for Spurs. And then up top, I'll go with Romelu Lukaku. We've discussed him earlier. I think he basically solves everything Chelsea lacked last season with a focal point up top, dominating centre-backs, but then also providing that goal-scoring threat, which they didn't have last season with the likes of Timo Werner and Giroud and Abraham up top.
Very, very good. And we always like to hear Billy Gilmore get a mention on this podcast because I completely forgot to do it last week for the first time. So I hang my head in shame there. Josh, in a bit of trouble, I reckon, who scored with that team. That was a decent setup.
There's a few matches, I'll start to say that. To start with, We've also got Areola in goal. As Raj said, there wasn't really much competition in that regard, but Areola was superb last season. He was one of the top-rated goalies, according to us at Who Scored. And it's surely only a matter of time before he takes the number 1 spot at West Ham. Our back four is made up of Emerson, the Tottenham new signing from Barcelona. He's been one of the La Liga's best fullbacks in the last 2 years. Probably didn't quite expect to leave Barcelona so soon. I think he was only registered last month, and I think they said that they can't wait for him to be there for many years. So that lasted about a month. But yeah, he should add real drive to Tottenham down the right flank. And at centre back, we've also got Christian Romero. He was the top-rated centre-back in Italy and also in the Champions League last season, and obviously had a storming Copa as well. We haven't got Varane. I think it's worth remembering that last season it wasn't his best of seasons for Real Madrid. I'm sure he's going to improve massively, though, this season. We've actually got Kurt Zouma. He obviously faded out at the end of last season under Tuchel, but he did play really well under Frank Lampard, and he actually ended the season with more goals than Anthony Martial. So that's quite nice for him. And then at left back, we've got Maxwell Cornet, who a bit of a random signing for Burnley, a bit out of character for them, but he's excelled for Lyon recently, switching from a forward position to a left back position. Moving into midfield, I'm a bit surprised that these two were missing, but we've got Jadon Sancho on one side with Jack Grealish on the other. Sancho has been the standout youngster in Europe for a couple of seasons now, and Grealish obviously got that big money move. We've also got Joe Willock in midfield, scoring in his last 7 games for Newcastle last season is an incredible record. And the fact that they got him back is obviously really important. And then we've got Chelsea's deadline day signing Saul Niguez, also in midfield. And then up front, we've got a former Serie A rivalry now in the Premier League in Lukaku and Ronaldo. So a pretty devastating front line.
2 good teams there. It's difficult to argue with anything that either of you have said, to be honest. So I'll call it a draw. I'll give you a draw. 2-2. I'll say 2-2 that game would be. Yeah, definitely wouldn't be 0-0 with all the talent on show. Let's move on to our next segment then. I think it's our final segment of this transfer special on Edge of the Box. And Martin's called it the Transfer Awards. I'm not really sure what we're awarding here, but fine. It's called the Transfer Award, so we'll go with it. So Start with you this time, Josh. Best individual signing.
I think it is hard to look beyond Ronaldo, but for the one that got me excited, and I think it was because it came out of nowhere, was Danny Ings at Villa. I really thought that was someone that Chelsea and Man City should have looked at when it didn't look like they were going to sign a striker. Obviously, Lukaku, amazing signing for Chelsea. But what I thought Man City should have stopped wasting their time with Harry Kane, because I think it was obvious to most people that Daniel Levy definitely wasn't going to sell him, especially anywhere near the price that City paid for Grealish. And I just thought that it's just a great signing for Villa. Saints fans will probably be a bit annoyed with him because, I mean, Villa are going places much quicker than Southampton, but it's not the Champions League European club that it was made out that Ings wanted to go to. But I think Villa have already seen the quality that he has, and I'm sure he's going to score a lot of goals for Villa this season. I think it's just a great signing for them.
Yeah, not really learned how to service him and get the best out of him yet, but he's still got 3 goal contributions in 3 games. So yeah, he'll score goals. He's clinical in and around the penalty area. So yeah, great signing. Obviously, I'm pleased to have him at Villa. I've gone boring answer, just gone for Lukaku because I do think he'll propel them to the league ultimately. I know obviously he was very, very expensive and it's boring to pick an expensive signing, but I think I had them down to win the league anyway, but we kind of knew Lukaku was going at the time. But I just think, for me, I think he guarantees the league for Chelsea, which might be a stupid thing to say with Man City and Man U lurking around the corner and Liverpool, Raj. But yeah, I just think he's going to propel them to the league. Who have you picked, Raj?
I had Lukaku as well. So
there we go.
The interesting thing is, so I think the interesting thing is he's got all the player traits that you want from a striker now that Chelsea have got everything else built around them. But I think also he fits quite nicely into Tuchel's 3-4-3. I think what Lukaku likes having is players quite close to him to play off. And I think with that 3-4-3, he's going to have 2 10s behind him. So Havertz and Mount a lot of the time as they played against Liverpool. And that kind of link play between those 3, I think, is going to be devastating. I think you saw glimpses of it in the first half against Liverpool. They were on the cusp of getting a goal or 2 extra on top of the Havertz header, but their final pass wasn't right. So I think as that chemistry gets a bit better, I think those 3 are going to be a devastating combination. And I think also you even saw how it attracts defenders towards him and it leaves space for the likes of Reece James, who came on the overlap twice for those 2 goals against Arsenal. And Lukaku's hold-up play for both of those goals was pretty good. So I think it's going to not only be a solution in terms of goals, but it's going to be a solution in terms of getting the best of everyone else around him.
Thanks for mentioning Kai Havertz. He came out my fantasy football team at the weekend as well. As you can tell, I had an absolute stormer on fantasy football this weekend. Right, best value signing. I've gone for Demarai Gray. Had a good start, 1.5 million, which I thought was cheap when they bought him, but he's obviously started like a house on fire for Everton. So I think for value for money, I don't think you can get much better than that. Raj, who have you picked?
I've gone for a guy I mentioned previously in my 11, Livramento at 5 million. I think I think it's going to turn out to be a ridiculous bargain because this guy's trajectory is going up and up. I think all 3 games so far he's impressed me. As I said, he's quick. He's very good on the ball. He can pass out from the back. So yeah, I think he's going to be a bargain. I think they're going to make a 20 million profit on him if Chelsea activate that buyback clause. So yeah, it's a no-brainer signing, and I think he's going to be a star for them. They've obviously got Kyle Walker-Peters as well, so they've got an embarrassment of riches at right back. So yeah, it should be interesting to see how they figure that one out.
And what have you gone with, Josh?
I've also gone for Demarai Gray. I think just as you said, the money that he cost, and it's a dream start for any signing, really. A couple of goals in 3 games, but for someone that cost basically next to nothing, I think it's brilliant for him. I remember a few years ago when he was at Leicester and he scored like a goal at Old Trafford against United, and it reminded most people of Nani. The way he finished it, he just rifled it in from distance, and nothing really come from him since then. Rodgers didn't really seem to trust him enough. And obviously, time will tell. I think if he has that consistency now. I was a bit surprised that he came back from Germany so soon. But yeah, Everton, it's certainly been to their gain.
I've got time for a little anecdote on Demarai Gray.
Yeah, always got time for anecdotes, Raj.
Going back to, I think it was March 2019, I actually met Demarai Gray in the middle of a club in Birmingham, actually. Nobody else recognised him. And at the time, he was telling me that Claude Puel was actually the one who was inhibiting his growth and development as a player. And he said he had a lot more to show. And he actually said to me, I could be doing what Jadon Sancho is doing in the Bundesliga right now. So it'll be interesting to see if he can outperform Sancho this season in the Premier League.
Yeah, if you go on a night out with Raj, don't tell him any of your secrets. He'll be straight on podcast, telling everyone what you've said. But yeah, great start. Electric player, and Benitez seems to have got a tune out of him early doors. Next section is dark horse / underrated signing, and then brackets one to watch. So Martin obviously couldn't really make up his mind what he wanted in this segment. But yeah, Josh, pick someone.
I've gone a bit random for this one. I mentioned him earlier, Maxwell Cornet at Burnley. I'm just really intrigued to see how he gets on. It's not often that you see Burnley spend money, to be honest, especially over 10 million. And they don't really deal with clubs like Lyon either. And he was a regular. He was a regular for Lyon last season. I think he started 29 or 30 league games for them. Converted from a winger to a left back, as I said earlier. I just can't wait to see what Sean Dyche has in his plans for him. He has this bizarre record against Man City that he played them three times with Lyon, was unbeaten across all of them, and scored in all of them as well. He has four goals against City, so he's probably one of the most successful players to ever play against Pep Guardiola. So it's weird to see how that will come out.
I mean, he probably shouldn't get used to records like that. I'm going to say he feels to me like one of those players that when Burnley do spend some money or they go abroad, I feel like the player just sits on the bench because he just ultimately doesn't suit what Sean Dyche wants. I could quite easily see him just being sat on the bench for the whole season. But yeah, be interesting to see what happens. Raj?
I mentioned Brian Hill earlier, but I'll go for another one. I'll go for Patson Daka. I think he won't raise a lot of eyebrows early on in the season because, as Josh said, Vardy's in good form again now. But I think as the season progresses, I think we'll see a lot more of Daka. And I think he's just the perfect profile for this Leicester team, to be honest. Rodgers likes having that spearhead striker who can make those runs in behind and get on the end of those free balls with lots of Harvey Barnes and James Maddison. And I think also Rodgers also showed he likes a two-striker formation. He's not using that at the moment, but I think as the season progresses, he might switch back to that 4-4-2 diamond we saw last season, maybe with Daka and Nicky and Nacho up front, or Daka and Vardy. So yeah, I think as the season goes on, he'll be the one to watch and he'll net a lot of goals, I think.
I have gone for the man whose shirt is behind me. He hasn't come up in any conversation so far, but Leon Bailey, who I think, obviously I'm a Villa fan, but I think that's probably a signing that's a level beyond Villa, or would have expected it to be a level beyond Villa. Sensational record in the Bundesliga, stats last season up there with Bayern Munich's wingers, and we all know how good they are. And I just think if people are looking for a Grealish replacement at Villa, people don't really seem to be talking about it, but I think he's going to be the go-to guy, the guy that Villa give the ball to. It's going to be Leon Bailey. He had a brief cameo against Watford on day one, and then he's been injured ever since. But even in that 30 minutes, he just looked so dangerous and got an assist. He's going to be a really, really good player for us, and I think the Premier League will suit him down to a T. But he's not really one that's talked about that much.
I think it's always a shame when you have an exciting signing and they join and they pick up an injury straight away. Like I feel that's the same with Jadon Sancho at the moment with Man United. He reported to pre-season last out of all the players, I think, and then he was ill, and now he's injured already, and he hasn't looked quite at it in these early games. And I think it's always a shame that when that happens, because it doesn't give them the best possible start into the season, which I guess is what's happened with Leon Bailey. I guess with so many other players playing and stuff, it's easy to forget. But yeah, for sure, he's a great signing. It was only not long ago he was linked to Man United and Arsenal, so Villa did really well to pick him up, and it wasn't over the top expensive either. So
no, but he only had 2 years left on his contract, I think. So I think that played a part in the relatively low fee. I'm not sure him being linked with Arsenal is a good thing, but we'll see what happens. Right then, worst signing. I feel like this might be one that we all have the same answer for, because it's worst signing, and then Martin loves the brackets. Biggest overspend in brackets. Josh?
I think I've gone for the same team as who you're talking about, but I've gone for a different player, and it is nothing against him as a player. It's just the money that Arsenal paid for Ben White. I think it's purely from an overspend perspective. I think if you look at the fees that have been paid for other players across Europe, I think Brighton did very well to get that much money. And I'm a big fan of Ben White as well. And I was looking forward to seeing how he'll develop. But I'm a little bit concerned for him. Arsenal's not somewhere that I would want to go to as a young defender. He's going to have to show a lot of character this season because they've started awfully. He's missed the last two through illness again. That's not ideal for a new signing, as we said, to have that sort of stop-start time to your start of a new career. And against Brentford, he didn't look comfortable at all. So I'm not feeling overly confident for White. But again, it's nothing against him. It's just Arsenal, really.
I think he'll look next to him in the dressing room at Callum Chambers, who was very highly rated when he went to Arsenal and has not really gone on to do anything. And I think I'll be looking at that and thinking, that's a concern. If I was Ben White, because he could quite easily go the same way. Callum Chambers was very, very highly rated and went for a big fee. They're probably the equivalent of what 50 million is now at the time when Chambers went. So, yeah, I can see why you've plumped for that. It's a brave answer. Let me tell you, I've got Arsenal fans coming for me all over the place on social media. So I starved Twitter for a few days, yeah. I've gone for Ramsdale, so hello, Arsenal fans, just because I think, obviously, did they need to spend 30 million on a second choice goalkeeper? I would have said that's probably not a priority. I just don't understand that football club, but I'm not going to go into massive detail because I've done that enough over the last 3 weeks. Raj, who have you picked?
Yeah, I'm going to make it a complete set. I've gone for Ben White as well. So I think the problem I have with the Ben White signing is for £50 million, I'm expecting an all-encompassing centre-back. I know he's a great ball player. I think he replaces David Luiz's function in that system. But he's not very dominant in the air. He doesn't really stand out to me as a top positional defender either. So for £50 million, I was expecting the whole package, not just a good ball player. I think the issue is his aerial duel rate, I think, was 49% last season. That's just not good enough at Premier League level. Ivan Toney completely dominated him against Brentford. So I've got major concerns. But I think back, why did they not just keep William Saliba? This guy is a top talent. He actually outperformed Wesley Fofana in the first half of the season before they were both signed to the Premier League. So Saliba's got the talent there. He's a good ball player. He's actually a lot more dominant in the air than White. So I just see it as a bit of needless business from Arsenal. And that's something, again, that fits in with the Ramsdale thing. That's, again, another bit of needless business. So that's why I've gone for him, really.
I think as well, if you just look at the two fees, just purely from Arsenal and Tottenham's perspective, if you look at Tottenham have paid, I think it's basically the same amount for Romero. I believe they're around the same price anyway. And I'd be certainly way more happy with Romero than I would Ben White. But I also think the environment that Ben White's in at Arsenal is just not conducive to developing a young defender.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest, I wouldn't swap Ben White for 3 of Villa centre-backs that we've got at the moment. So I think that tells you a lot about where Arsenal are at the moment. I'll be very, very concerned if I was an Arsenal fan, but thankfully I am not. Right then, best overall team business, Raj.
Obviously, Chelsea have had a great window. United have had a great window. I've actually gone for Spurs, and it's more because of the vision they're now implementing, which I think was lacking with Daniel Levy. And I think he's now got it with the new director of football, Fabio Paratici. You've seen they're targeting a certain profile of players, very young players. So Romero is 23. They've got Emerson Royale, 22. Brian Hill, I've already mentioned, is I think 21. And then Papa Matassar as well, who they've loaned back for the season. But he's 18. So they're targeting a good young profile of player. They've all got high potentials. And I think that's the kind of market Spurs do need to be shopping in. They can't really afford those big stars. So it's better to shop in that kind of high potential bracket and look to develop them, which is what they did under Pochettino. The likes of Dele Alli, Ericsson, Son, all bought as quite young stars and then developing into something much greater. And then that team peaked as a result of that. So I think we're seeing the kind of start of that happening again with this Spurs cycle.
Ultimately, they've held on to Harry Kane as well, which is a big thing because he will give you 20, 25 goals through the season. So a pretty successful window for Spurs. I think that's a fair pick. Along the same vein, I went for Leicester, which is the first summer for ages they haven't lost anyone. I feel they've built a better squad with the players that they've bought in there. But even just the signing of Ryan Bertrand, for example, on a free. I know he hasn't played much so far, but it adds to their depth. It adds to their squad. Daka's going to be a really good player for them. I just think they've done good business, Leicester, and having not lost anyone and having already had quite a strong squad. I think they've had a good summer. I think that's as good a summer as Leicester could have asked for. So a great window from them. Josh, who have you picked?
I think as well, just on Leicester, crucially, they got all their business done pretty early as well. So I think Brendan Rodgers had pretty much the whole summer to work with Daka, Samari and Bertrand, even though Bertrand's had COVID. But yeah, they got their business done early. I've been a bit biased and gone for Manchester United. I mean, I thought you might. I think Chelsea have done excellently as well, obviously. But what we said earlier, if you told a Manchester United fan that they were going to sign Jadon Sancho, Varane, and Ronaldo at the start of the summer, I just don't think they wouldn't have believed you at all. They're all mega signings, but they're all the right profile of players that they needed. They needed someone to partner Maguire, who was better than Lindelof, and they've got that with Varane. Sancho, we've had a problem with we've had a problem of balance on the wings. And we got that with Sancho. And obviously Ronaldo is just that number 9 that is going to guarantee you goals that, as Raj said earlier, Martial doesn't, Rashford doesn't, and Cavani he isn't fit enough to play as much. The only, I think sadly it will mean that McFred becomes more important. I don't think you can really get much balance, give the front 3 balance without those two. So it probably means Donny van de Beek probably won't play ever again. And I'm not sure why Jesse Lingard wants to stay, but but I think in terms of those 3 signings, they've really transformed Manchester United. No star midfielder aside, they have to kick on and get silverware this season.
Never heard them called McFred before. It's quite simple, but I quite enjoyed it. I was tittering away to myself in my head there. Right then, bracket man's back. Worst team business in brackets. Has anyone got worse? ? I was going to say Burnley, but I don't know, that's not fair. I'm just going to go with Newcastle because basically they've just broke even by getting Willock back, so they're going to be in trouble again. The squad hasn't really improved. All they've done is bring someone back who was there last season anyway. I've seen them play live this season and there were no great shows because I didn't think Villa were great that day, and yet they won 2-0 quite comfortably. So yeah, I'll go Newcastle. Josh?
I've also gone for Newcastle. I think it's just another dismal transfer window, but entirely expected at this point. I mean, they brought back Joe Willock, as you said, and even that was a struggle. It didn't look like that was going to happen at one point. You would say would be the bare minimum based on how he performed last season, was to get him back. I mean, guaranteed football didn't even get Axel Tuanzebe to them. Villa managed to get him, even though he'll probably be third choice, won't he, at Villa? And then they obviously had deadline day deals for Hamza Chowdhury and Boubacar Kamara. They both fell through. So they're just basically Mike Ashley's relying on Callum Wilson and Alan St-Maximin up front, and neither of those have injury records to suggest that they will sustain the whole season. I think that's the only reason St-Maximin's still there, because when he has played and he has been fit, he's looked amazing. But he only started 19 games last season, so that's obviously a big problem. And Ashley's just basically hung. Steve Bruce is definitely not the most popular figure there anyway, but he's not been given any favours by Mike Ashley.
Oh dear, Newcastle United. Raj, who's your worst team?
Initially, I did have Leeds before that kind of deadline day swoop for Dan James. I think they only brought in Junior Firpo, but they now got James to add that competition to the front positions. So then I had to go for Liverpool in the end. I think basically, as I said before, I think they've just sat on their hands this window. They've allowed 3 key positions. I mentioned obviously the midfielder and attacker earlier in the show, but also the other one I think is back at right back as well. I don't think Neco Williams is anywhere near the standard required to back up Trent Alexander-Arnold. He struggled whenever he's played. And Trent is picking up a few injuries as well. I think he picked up one for England and he also picked one up earlier last season. So yeah, I think that's 3 positions they could have really strengthened. And again, I think that could cost them trophies this season. And when you've got the likes of Salah, Van Dijk, and most importantly, you've got Jurgen Klopp, you should be making every effort to support a trophy assault, and they haven't. And you kind of not taking advantage of kind of a good group of players and also a good manager. I
think that's probably fair when you take into account what the three they're competing with, have done as well. But I still think they'll be in and around it. But yeah, I completely get what you say and take on board what you say. I think that's a really fair point. I think that does us for this Edge of the Box transfer special with BetVictor on WhoScored.com. I mean, how many things do I need to say there? Absolutely ridiculous, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks ever so much to Raj on his debut, solid debut. And as I always say, it's always great to have Josh on whilst Martin Lawrence sits at home. We'll have our normal show back next week where we're previewing match week 4 in the Premier League. So make sure you've got your post notifications on and you are subscribed to us to make sure you know when that's coming out. Hopefully you all enjoyed the show. Thanks ever so much for watching. Cheers.